What's a movie you love, but if someone said they hated it, you would completely understand why? Sky High. It's a silly tween movie with silly tween jokes. And I think it's funny. Oh man, I had completely forgotten about that movie. I remember liking it as a kid/tween, but I hadn't thought about it in years. Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Tried to get my wife to watch it, and she said it was so damn boring. Totally understandable because it's weird and pretty slow, but I love that movie. The music for the movie alone is just stunning. Waterworld. Wet Mad Maximum. Swiss Army Man. A truly beautiful film about friendship, but I understand how it's not to everyone's tastes. I love this movie. Fantastic Mr. Fox. Gloriously animated, but some may find its stop motion art direction and mature themes unnerving. Maybe it's a Wes Anderson thing. I Love Dogs fits as well, with all the Japanese dialogue without subs. That chisty gun-fu Christian Bale movie called Equilibrium. It's like The Matrix set in a hybrid of the dystopias from 1984, Fahrenheit 451, and Brave New World. Plus Sean Bean reads William Butler Yeats poetry before doing what Sean Bean does best. It's the most ridiculously literate sci-fi Hollywood garbage and I ducking love it. The Swedish Language Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy. Very faithful adaptation, but the depiction of main characters on alt is brutally realistic. I love the series because it's a story of an abused person's growth and vengeance against their abusers. Yeah, that scene is terrible to watch, and I couldn't believe my eyes the first time I saw it. The entire trilogy is a great watch and I would recommend everyone to see it. What We Do in the Shadows. I love it. It's one of my favorites and I love the show as well. But when I showed it to my family, they hated it. I know it's a stupid sight gag joke, but his face on the cat body always makes me laugh my guts out. I love that movie. Napoleon Dynamite. The kind of ennui seep setting this movie depicts is something that many were presumably privileged enough to never have experienced firsthand. But for those of us who have, the absurd kinds of strange personalities that develop in this environment are intimately familiar to us, and it is a movie that is both validating and hilarious. I think that's a really good description. Growing up in a small town, as a nerdy kid who doesn't do drugs or drink or party, it has a kind of bland and maddening slowness to it. You want to jump out of your skin and do something, but your world is so small. The pace of the dialogue and the lingering still shots of the town with their bungalows and quiet streets and vacant schoolyards captures it perfectly. I moved away as soon as I could to get a job, but you never forget those years. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Probably not everyone's humor. Watched it last night and it never fails to keep me smiling. Knives. Is Scott here? Wallace. Actually. Window smashes. He just left. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. I've laughed at that movie harder than any other I can remember. But if I hadn't been a few beers in and with a group of friends that are a natural laugh track, I don't know if I'd have found it as funny. I still laugh heartily when I watch it, sober, about once a year, but I've found the state of mind/mood I watch things for the first time in has huge impact on how I view them on future occasions. Oh, hiddy ho officer, we've had a doozy of a day. Kung Fu Hustle, because it's Kung Fu Hustle. Kung Fu Hustle is a masterpiece and I don't give one shiz what anyone says. Romy and Mitchell's high school reunion. I think it's hilarious but some might find it too goofy I suppose. Who could hate this movie? Without Romy and Mitchell we'd never have post-its. Monty Python and the Holy Grail edit. Thank you for my first silver. This movie means a lot to me as it brings up memories of my childhood running around with friends yelling NI. Edit 2. Thank you so much for my first gold. I finally get to check out this lounge I've heard so much about. I think Holy Grail is more accessible than Life of Brian or Meaning of Life. I'd understand if someone thinks any of them are not their style, but I'd understand most if they said they didn't enjoy watching a fat dude eat till he explodes, or because they're fans of proper Latin grammar. Old Boy, Korean movie. It is a little ducked up movie, so I understand if someone doesn't like that. That movie made me WTF at the end of it. Like what did I just watch? but the fight scene in the hallway when the guy gets out of his room was pretty awesome. Hot Rod. You hooches heads, guess who just found a bag of fireworks in the public restroom? Would you care to light them off? To all the boys I loved before. It's flaming garbage, but some part of my monkey brain says yes. You like this? I watched it once a day for a week and broke up with an now ex because I realized how poorly I was being treated. It's so predictable and cheesy, but that's why it's good. I loved it because it just made me feel warm inside. Sometimes you just want to watch something that'll make you feel happy. Glad it made you realize you should have been treated better. Dogma. Beautiful naked big-titted women just don't fall out of the sky, you know. Grave of the Fireflies. Some people can't handle that level of sadness. This was going to be my answer. It's the best movie I will never watch again, despite owning it. Joe Dirt. It's a very dumb comedy, but I love that movie so much. With or without the scooter stick. Honestly, this is one of the most endearing movies of all time and I love it, even if it's stupid AF. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is a beauty of a movie and one of my all-time favorites. So much has been said of this movie, the writing, directing, acting by Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, but can I just highlight Elijah Wood in this thing? His character might be the greatest romantic movie villain of all time. I'm not sure if that's a product of the writing or the performance, probably both, but man is it effective. I hate Patrick so much it hurts when I rewatch it. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure / Bogus Journey. I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea. Be excellent to each other. Cool Runnings. I love the Caribbean, and for a while it was the only VHS in the house of movie set somewhere warm. How could anyone not love Cool Runnings? It's hilarious, heartwarming, inspiring, and heartbreaking. One of my favorite movies ever. Jennifer's Body. It has a cult following now. It's a perfect Halloween-y popcorn movie emo, but I can totally see why it bombed initially, and most people write it off for gratuitous sexy scenes and weird dialogue. Edit. Wow, thanks for all the karma and the silver. I thought I was such a weirdo for loving this movie. Megan Fox says it's still her favorite work she's ever done. Check out this article about our favorite feminist horror film, BuzzFeed News. One of the reasons it bombed is because the advertising team depicted it as a sexy slasher for teenage boys when it's more of a horror comedy for women. Midsommar. I watched this movie with my boyfriend a few weeks ago, and it's the only movie I've ever seen that had me saying wow, what an aesthetically pleasing movie with such an interesting plot. I hate it. There were so many parts of that movie that made me squirm because I was so uncomfortable. All in all, I think it was really well done, and it had me completely captivated the entire time. But I'll never watch it again. Napoleon Dynamite. Do the chickens have large talons? Not sure why, but this is one of my favorite quotes. The Naked Gun movies. Bloody hilarious. Seemingly looking up the skirt of a girl who's above him on a ladder. Nice beaver. She pees him a taxidermy beaver, thanks. I just had it stuffed. The Star Wars prequels. Yeah, the dialogue is stupid almost all the time, but the theme and general plot of Anakin's turn to the dark side because of the failings of the Jedi is actually really great. They're fun to watch, plus all the memes. I would go even further and say all Star Wars movies. I like them and find them very entertaining. However, I can totally see how some people have zero interest in it and just see it as over-the-top action noise with weird dialogue. Donnie Darko. Sometimes I doubt their commitment to sparkle motion. My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Note that I'm a 36-year-old guy, was in the military and now work as a machinist. It's a cheesy movie, but I find it very sweet. What you mean he don't eat meat? I make lamb. Hook. Wonderful movie, but it is quite childish. That's what I enjoy about it, but I can see how others wouldn't like it. Rufio 000. Starship Troopers. Actually now I'm good if someone's not a Starship Troopers fan. Men. Women. Sharing showers. What's not to like? Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I love the movie, but totally understand if someone said it's terrible. It's a stoner movie and a meh one at that. That film is one of my absolute favorites. I used to smoke a lot when I first watched it. Haven't smoked in nearly 10 years now, but the humor still gets me. I'm just childish. I guess you had to grow up with Spaceballs to get a kick out of all the quotables. Or maybe you're just surrounded by a-holes. Event Horizon. It's cheesy but I love it. It's fine if people don't like it. Duck this ship. We never got the cut of the film with the most disturbing footage. We don't get enough sci-fi psycho horror. Kung POW. Weo. Space Jam. It is my #1 guilty pleasure movie, but goddamn is it terrible when you look at it critically. Yeah, like, WTF is Marvin the Martian even doing out there? He's gotta be the worst ref in the history of basketball. Fifth Element Equilibrium Chronicles of Riddick. I mean, I understand them if they choose to hate these movies, but they are wrong. I love The Fifth Element. And I love the Riddick movies, even though on paper, I should not love them, but I do. Vin Diesel gets so much cheers for the F&F movies, but he will always get a par for the Riddick films. Signs. I can look past or make excuses for the water is the weakness deal. I like the ominous tone with some dark humor, the focus on one family instead of other alien movies. It was the first scary movie I ever watched all the way through. I was 5, because let's be real, those first shots of the aliens are terrifying. But yeah, it's a typical M. Night Shyamalan dong movie, so I get it. The roof scene, the graveyard scene and the news showing the capture footage, I still think about those scenes. The Lobster, very good flick, but a very slow burn. Not just a slow burn, there's off-putting dialogue and some pretty visceral violence including animal cruelty. It is a great movie, but I'm not sure when I'd be able to watch it again. A Knight's Tale. I scrolled through this whole post looking for it and no one said it. I personally love it, but it really is a terrible movie. I loved this film. I actually found some of it funny. Somehow it counted as historical fiction and we watched it in class. The Butterfly Effect. Because this movie is ducking depressing. Director's cut traumatized me for weeks. I honestly love the first 2 Twilight movies and put them on all the time. I use them when I'm studying/working because they're relatively calm without a lot of loud noises and the color scheme is inoffensive in the background. I had to chuckle a bit just because of how you described the movie. It is so bland that the film basically becomes a white noise machine with no jarring colors or sounds to distract. I understand the appeal of the films, but duck me looking back on them. I've seen more life in graveyards. Mars Attacks. It's so dumb, but I love it. Inception. Because it's Inception and may not make enough sense to justify the almost 3 hours spent watching it. I rewatched recently, and the entire first act is pretty much just spoon-fed exposition disguised as Cobra recruiting Ariadne. I can see how it was necessary, but it was pretty annoying to get through the second time around. The Labyrinth. The one with David Bowie. I absolutely adore it, but can definitely see why it wouldn't suit for many. I mean, people made a religion out of David Bowie's Rick Bulge from that movie, so I think that counts for something. The Village. I totally get the hate. Even I only really like the first half or 3/4. The twist is sort of meh, but I like the general idea of it. The vibe of the movie is awesome. All the quiet tension. Hackers. Hack the Planet. Heathers. I absolutely love it, but it's just a lot with the murder and framing suicide stuff, and some people might not get the jokes, so I could definitely see why it wouldn't be somebody's cup of tea. Duck me gently with a chainsaw. Sweeney Todd. I love it, but it's definitely a weird one. The Crow. Man, I love The Crow. It's such a product of that era and it's great. Did you know that he act too? Yes, everyone knows that. 2001: A Space Odyssey. It is one of my favorites, and it is a beautiful film with a deep meaning, but I can see why people would find it boring or not to their taste. I have tried to get my friends to watch it with me, and they just don't share my pain for space and futurism. Edit. Thanks for the Gold Stranger. My first ever award. Toys. Robin Williams, Joan Cusack, Michael Gambon, LL Cool J. Somehow this terrible movie captured my heart, including the soundtrack. Tori Amos FTW. Holy ch, is such a great movie. Grew up watching this and love it still. I could say a million things about this film, about the soundtrack, the style, etc. But I will only say one thing before I get out of everybody's hair. Lines Cool J's performance is phenomenal. I didn't realize until I was an adult how funny he is in this movie. Expert deadpan delivery and all. The ongoing gag of him appearing out of nowhere throughout the film is great, particularly when they are having dinner and all of a sudden he is just there wearing the same color outfit as the wall behind him when there was no possible way for him to actually be there the whole time. Cracks me up every time I watch it. Tombstone. Westerns aren't for everyone. But when a western is looking for someone to duck with, I'm your Huckleberry. You gonna do something or just stand there and bleed. Muppets Most Wanted. My 2-year-old is watching this in the other room as I write this. Not the best Muppet movie, but not the worst either. And the songs are catchy as hell. No Country for Old Men. Dune. My favorite book, and the movie is an objectively bad adaptation, and likely makes zero sense if you're not familiar with the material. But man, is it a vibe. The production design, the music, the mannered performances. I love it. Yeah, most people expect sci-fi, but it's really political intrigue and machination. And that Toto soundtrack is amazing. AI. Artificial intelligence. Yes. Haven't watched it in years, but I remember ugly crying to this as a teenager. Mallrats. That kid is back on the escalator. Clerks. On the surface, it is a rather bland film of nothing but people just talking about relatively trivial things, but when you really dig even just a bit below the surface of the low budget feel and some forced acting, it really can strike a chord with people. I saw it for the first time when I was 16, and seeing people in their mid-20s still talk about stuff that happened in high school as if it was still important really freaked me out, and I wasn't even a kid that hated high school. I still think about the contractors on the Death Star scene all of the time. Speed Racer. This movie is ridiculous and that's why it's so fun. It's like the closest you could ever get to live action Ridline. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I loved it, but it gets really freaky pretty fast, and you can hardly understand the dialogue for some of it. Impossible to walk in this muck. No footing at all. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. That move is awful, but it's fun, and add an audience participation. That joke is legally required, despite my disdain for it at this point, and it's an absolute blast. But, you know, all the huge fans acknowledge it's a flaming dumpster fire of a story. The Phantom Menace. I thought the politics were interesting, but a lot of people say they were boring. For me personally, the best way I've heard the situation phrased is, the prequels were good ideas that were executed poorly, the sequels were bad ideas that were executed reasonably well. Jojo's Rabbit. I get some people can't see the true value of the film and just get all mad Hitler or man Nazi and hate it. If anyone hates that movie because of Nazis, they miss the entire point of the movie. How you have to be a child to believe in the utter BS Nazi propaganda does not come through to some people still baffles me. Mulholland Drive is one of my all-time favorites, but if someone said they didn't, like, I wouldn't fault them for it. It's unnerving, confusing, sexually charged, and most of all David Lynchian. Came here to say this, or just to comment any David Lynch movie lol. Kingpin. I understand why no one would like it. Its jokes are corny and predictable, but it's so comfy to me. Remind me of my past. Kingpin is one of the funniest movies ever made, and I'll die on that hill. So many visual gags in the background to fill in the gaps between the excellent jokes and dialogue. Going to post an obvious one which people actively dislike, The Last Jedi. The only thing I didn't agree with was the Carrie Poppins scene, but pretty much loved everything else, especially the forced projection at the end. I can absolutely see why people disliked it though. Maybe keeping the director consistent would help with the entire series. Last GD could have been perfectly serviceable to others if we had been given better setup in the first movie, or if it was actually warranted for the third movie. It sets up some plot then goes off to introduce characters that are never used ever again. The Shape of Water. It was so beautiful, but there are certain people I'll never watch it with, because if they haven't checked out by the musical number, they'll do it right then and miss the ending. Raising Arizona. I love it and always have. Absolutely think the humor is some of the best of the 1980s. But it seems like this film is either loved or hated. I watched it once with two close friends who I thought would enjoy it, and they didn't laugh once. I've since heard from a few others who just don't find that sort of humor funny. To me it's weird, but everyone has their own tastes. The John Wick series. I love the action scenes and the obvious love and effort put into making them, but I understand if people may not be on board with the increasingly ludicrous plots and characters. You need to be the type of person that loves insane choreography and doesn't mind a silly plot. Despicable Me. The first one is a legitimately good movie. It's cute, has a nice plot, and it's fun all around. The second wasn't as good, but it was still cute and watchable. I won't say they're masterpieces, but they're entertaining and enjoyable. Then the Minions took over and it all went to hell. The third one wasn't great. They really should have stopped after number 2. Requiem for a Dream. So good but so sad. The only movie I can think of that I loved, but can never bring myself to watch again. Knives Out. A great murder mystery, but I can understand that it's not someone's type. What's not to like? The Princess Diaries. IDKY I like it so much, but I wore out the VHS when I was younger. The Princess Diaries make all the boy moose go wah. All the Pitch Perfect movies. Shrek. It's been memed so much the og greatness is compromised to the non-initiated. Silence of the Lambs. My favorite, but I can very clearly understand why other people may not like it. Only movie my mother ever forbade me and my sister from watching. So, of course we snuck out and rented it the moment my sister got her driver's license. The only thing we've never been able to figure out is why she didn't want us to watch it. She doesn't watch anything in the horror/suspense genre. To this day our best guess is that she loves animal films and might have accidentally gone to see it thinking there'd be lambs in it and was scarred for life. Occasionally, I'll mention something related to that film and my mother will just quietly say you weren't allowed to see it. M42. A Clockwork Orange. Van Helsing. It's an insanely campy monster movie from the early 2000s, but it's fun and has possibly the best Dracula ever. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.